The role of media in the way how we get informed today shouldn't be underestimated, because today we are not just the media audience, we are rather the media users, because we may create news by ourselves. What is more, today it's impossible to observe all the relevant events by your own eyes, so you have to refer to something and trust something, and it's media.
I think it definitely depends on who owns them. You know, for Russian media, they are great. I read Russian media a lot of the time, but I don't rely on their information when it comes to Ukrainian conflict, for example.
I think that we should trust the media and the information that the media is giving us. However, I think that at all times we must remain vigilant and look out for the disinformation and the propaganda that might be utilized against the interests of our societies. However, that should not undermine the overall expectations for the media resources, and while remaining vigilant, I think that yes, we can trust the media for the most part.
Can the media be trusted? And how does media work? As you heard, young people have their own thoughts about it. But what do experts say? Let's have a look.
So, why do I think the media are very important in our lives? There are so many things happening in the world, from Trump giving a speech to war in the Middle East to the coronavirus that affects us, everybody. Well, for all these things, we look at the media to be informed. Of course, we learn things at school, but there are so many things happening at the same time. And the media, they inform us about that. They make a very important selection from all that news happening all over the world. That's why we often call them the gatekeepers. They make a selection of all the events happening because we can't tell everything. And that's why the media play this important role. They have a certain power or influence making that selection, sometimes also making the news.
They are a mirror of the world, a mirror in which the world's events are somehow reflected, displayed for us to see. And nothing can be, of course, further from the truth. First of all, the media decide where to put the mirror and which part of reality will be reflected. In other words, which events and information are deemed newsworthy. And second, and perhaps most importantly, this mirror, if we stick with this image, with this metaphor, is equipped with multiple filters, which means that only certain aspects of story will get reported. Certain people will get a chance to speak. Certain institutions and actors will be represented. So, and at the same time, many others will be obviously left out of the story. They won't be visible to the audiences. So the media are very selective, and they not only select stories and events, but also they interpret them for us. They put them in a certain interpretative frame, which tells us things like who is the hero, who is the villain, what is the importance of the story for society or for us as citizens, whether and how much should we be worried about it, and so on and so forth. This power of media to set an agenda and decide what will be put under the spotlight and what will be suppressed bridges to the other important role which is ascribed to media in democratic societies, and that is the one of a watchdog, so-called watchdog role. So this metaphor refers to the expectations that we have from the media to scrutinize those in power, to investigate their actions and reveal any wrongdoings. So in this sense, media are an essential pillar of accountability in democratic societies, making sure that those who are elected to power or other influential and powerful individuals and organizations do not abuse this power in a nutshell. And this is why media freedom is so important. So without it, obviously, the media would be never able to fulfill their watchdog role properly. So media freedom means that journalists can work without any undue pressures or constraints by the state, but also by economic actors and forces.
So media are not a mirror of the world. Even though they try to inform us about current events in the world, we have to be aware of the selective way they show us what's happening. At the same time, media do have a very important role to play when it comes to their watchdog role. In order to be able to make sure that powerful people don't abuse media, it's important that media freedom is guaranteed. But why is that so important? And is it guaranteed all around the world?
So since I think that the media plays such a central role in our democracy, I think it's crucial that they can work independently, autonomously from the government, from politics in general. And in most countries we see that this is actually the case. In most Western democracies this is actually the case, although there is some struggle about influence and about censorship. Most of the time journalists can write what they want, but this is not the case all over the world. There's a lot of places where there's no press freedom, there's no democracy, or there is a not full democracy. And that really influences how journalists can do their job. And if journalists can't do their job, writing autonomously about politics, it's very hard to trust them and to expect them to inform us well about what happens in the world. So I think this is a crucial thing around the world. And for instance, the president of the US calling the media the enemy of the people is really damaging for the trust we have in the media all over the world. Dictators are using this kind of quotes against journalists, which I think is really harmful. So we need to be critical, especially in those places where there's no real press freedom.
Most of the time, media freedom is guaranteed in Western European countries. But what's it like in Eastern European countries?
The role of media in East European countries is very much the same as anywhere else. The difference is that in comparison to most countries of Western Europe, media in Eastern Europe are generally operating under the condition of substantially lower press freedom, as well as lower degree of pluralism than what we observe in most Western European countries. So there's a process of increasing political pressure on the media from the state, from the government, and simultaneously the process of what we call oligarchization, so gradual transfer of media ownership into the hands of these local business elites.
So media freedom isn't always guaranteed, because the media is often influenced by politicians or rich business people. Does that mean we can no longer trust traditional media as a source of information?
So I think the news media are really important for us to get informed. We see from research that following the news on television, reading the newspaper, and also online matters for your political knowledge. If you don't do that, it's very hard to stay informed. So all these media are very important. However, social media don't contribute to political knowledge. That research shows that if you follow Facebook and Twitter, that is simply not enough to stay informed. So it's really important to stick to some traditional media and not only rely on social media to stay informed about what happens in the world.
Okay, so in Belgium, traditional media remain a very important source of reliable information. Can traditional media also be trusted in Eastern European countries?
Specifically different is the role of internet in the political landscape, because in many countries, in many of those countries that are suffering from a decline of media freedom, such as Hungary, Poland, Serbia, Bulgaria, internet remains pretty much the only domain or channel for free and independent information. Of course, it is not without problems. Even in these countries, just like in most other countries in the West, digital platforms are also channels of disinformation, the channels of manipulation and propaganda. But at the same time, they are the last sort of refuge for independent news organizations. So it is very much only through these channels that people can receive information that is not completely controlled or somehow affiliated to the current governments.
So in some countries in Eastern Europe, it's more difficult to find reliable sources of information. What can you do if you're searching for them?
Those sources that are transparent, that are at least publishing, that are being open about their ownership structures. This is a very, very important aspect, I would say. It is hard to find a news organization in Eastern Europe that is not owned by an oligarch or by some kind of an owner who is in very good relationship with the current government. But at least those who are more decent than others will disclose that information, at least in the newspaper. You will be able to read, to see the information, who the owner is and what kind of businesses does this owner also have. So people can make up their own minds if they read about a topic that is close to the area of the owner's interests, whether the news is objective or not. So that's at least something that can be taken into consideration when people are trying to make a judgment about whether to trust the brand or not.
Can media be trusted? What do you think? Feel free to discuss it with other youngsters. In our next video, we'll talk about information on social media. See you there.